Yo, I'm back. And in today's podcast, I'm going to tell you what I've been up to for the past 2 years. Things like why I stopped publishing podcasts on Catch The Zenith, making my first dollar online, starting a second podcast, getting into a master's program, juggling too many plates with 2 businesses, working in the US for 6 months, starting a software company, and rethinking what I want to do with this podcast moving forward. So that's what we're going to cover in today's episode. So let's jump onto my computer and let's get to work. So back in July 2022, I recorded the last episode for my podcast, Catch The Zenith. And quick side note here, at that point it was a German podcast. However, nowadays I'm recording in English. And in this last episode, I talked to Professor Manfred Brun, who used to be my marketing professor when I was an undergrad student. And there we talked about 3 big drivers in marketing. And at that point, I really loved doing those podcast episodes and talking to amazing people like him. And at the same time, it was some kind of creative outlet for me and a way how to satisfy my deep curiosity for knowledge, for concepts, for ideas, while at the same time becoming more literate, more fluent, and overall better at presenting stuff. However, at that time, I decided to start my second business. My first business was more kind of a learning experience, and I didn't make any real money. So I was now really ready to start my second business, make real money, and help real people. And I'm not entirely sure what the motivators were, why I wanted to start. Obviously, there were some, but what I'm sure or what I know with certainty is that I simply love doing something productive. I love the game of business because there are so many challenges and so many skills and sub-skills to acquire within sales, within marketing, or building an exceptional product that your customers love. So fast forward, I wanted to start a business. So I thought, how do I do that? Give you a little bit context here. I followed a YouTuber for a little bit more than 1.5 years, maybe even more. And this YouTuber was called Richard Yu. And he documented his entire journey from a broke college kid that started multiple business and failed over and over again to a guy that had a multi-figure, don't know how many figure business, so really successful. And he documented everything in between. His daily routines, high-performing routines, cold showers, all that good stuff. And that was really inspiring. And after a certain period, he had a business ready that took off, where he helped either existing or he helped aspiring coaches to start their own coaching program, or already established coaches to make more revenue. And I thought, maybe that's interesting, because I wasn't really sure what kind of business should I start. And it took me over a year to take action and actually buy his product, his course, because his product was a course, basically. Because I was really scared. Because I knew once I invest in that course, I want to take action and I need to expose myself on social media, record Instagram Reels and Instagram Stories to generate leads and hopefully enroll some customers into my program, sell my product. And I knew it's a ton of work and I was a little bit scared. And then fast forward a year later, in 2022, I said, fuck it, guys, let's do it. I have one life. I want to learn. I want to do that. So what I ended up happening is I booked a sales call, I guess through his YouTube page I guess it was YouTube. And I purchased this program and it was a significant investment. It cost me roughly 8K, a little bit less, but it turned out to be the best investment ever because within a time period of 3 months, I knew so many things about business. All of a sudden, I knew how to generate leads, how to do outbound messages, outbound emails, how to book sales calls, and how to conduct sales calls with a proper script, and then to close them, so to sell them into my program, build an exceptional product or the program, deliver on my product, my promises, and then retain them. And within the first 30 days of doing that, I had my first 3 customers and 5.5K in revenue. And the major takeaway for me here was I don't need to be that intelligent. As long as I put in the reps, the work, you can become pretty darn successful. You don't need to be that smart if you just execute on the knowledge that is given to you. Because that program which I purchased, this coaching program that he offered, gave you like the SOPs, the standing operating procedures, which is a fancy word for step-by-step guide, how to build up your business, more precise, your coaching business. It gave you everything. You just need to take action. And that's, I guess, a point where a lot of people fail, because it requires a lot of work. You know what you need to do, but are you actually doing it? So, and then what they taught me in that coaching program is whenever you start a business, you need to opt for a niche. And they taught me this approach of start with scratch your own itch, or with your own expertise with this approach. And I thought, okay, I'm good at productivity. I love daily structures. I know a lot about time management. While at the same time, I was diagnosed back in 2019 with ADHD or ADD, and I overcame all the struggles, all the challenges. Why not teach other people how I did it, how I overcame the struggles? And this is what I ended up doing. I opted for this niche. I said, let's go into that and build a product there. So, and by the way, because I started this business, this was the reason why I stopped publishing those podcasts on Catch The Zenith. However, I never stopped entirely podcasting, because at the same time, I directly started a new podcast called ADHD Power, specifically for adults with ADHD. And because I wanted to have a singular focus, that my entire life is directed towards one topic, that everything I consume, like reading books, YouTube videos, courses, everything, or my business, everything is only that topic, to become as fast as possible a real expert, to build up on my previous knowledge. Because before, I never thought a lot about ADHD. I just looked at myself, those were my challenges, and I want to solve them, and I solved them through reading books, through living more healthy, and I overcame all the challenges. And then I had acquired my own knowledge, but I saw all of a sudden that this ADHD industry is huge. There are so many books and stuff. So I went into Facebook groups to understand the pains of my customers, etc. And what I ended up doing is, okay, I sold within the first 30 days the first 3 clients. And then I had like a kickoff date, and I created my MVP before the kickoff date. Like, I recorded all the videos, created the entire structure, a real startup approach, basically. And like that, and by the way, for those of you who don't know, MVP is a minimum viable product, like your first version of your product that you can test and get a lot of feedback. So I created my first version, my first product, which was a course consisting out of 3 pillars. You have videos to watch, you have a coaching community, and you have coaching calls. And this program was called Deep Focus System. And with that program, my goal was to help adults with ADHD holistically to master ADHD and to turn it into a superpower. It helped a lot of people, or at least some people, let's put it like that. They were pretty satisfied, some of them. I got a lot of feedback, and I realized that although I recorded so many videos and I provided so much value, which they, to a certain degree, found really helpful, it was too much. They were overwhelmed. And obviously, if you have ADHD, a lot of them are pretty fast overwhelmed. So I needed to change my approach. And I thought, okay, now I have my MVP. I need to change something. I need to cut things off. And I realized that, okay, I don't want to serve all ADHDers, all adults with ADHD. I want to solve those who are struggling with productivity-related issues. So time management, procrastination, motivation, distractions. That's where I'm good at. Let's focus on that. And I focus really specifically on the procrastination aspect. I wanted to help them to make a lot of progress on the procrastinated projects within the first 30 days working with us. We had like a small challenge in the program where they could win something. And this is what I did. And I ended up creating this evergreen scalable product called Productivity Powerhouse. This was my, let's say, V2 version, version 2 of my product, Productivity Powerhouse, specifically focused on productivity stuff. And By the way, guys, for those of you who would love to learn more about this course, I'm not anymore coaching or charging anything for that. I'm not doing that anymore. I decided to publish this course entirely online. And if you go, you can see that right here. For those of you who are watching the YouTube video, I'm sure, or listening to that, I showed you basically the entire course, how you can get it for free. So long story short, back in the day, we had my entire course here in Kajabi, paid over $200 for that per month. Yeah. By the way, in the beginning, I didn't pay anything. I just delivered on a Google Drive, which is free. But over time, I decided to use Kajabi, which cost me $200 per month. But it was really helpful to have it pretty neat, the entire course pretty neat at one place. And I decided now to give this course away for free. If you want to have it, here is it. It's a Google Drive, a Google Doc, which you can access through signing up for my newsletter. Then on the confirmation page, you can access this. Or if you go my personal website, nicolaflückiger.com, and scroll a little bit down to the resource section, you can simply click on English productivity course under resources, and you have free access to the entire course, where each title here is linked to a video. So I hope you enjoy. You have a lot to watch here: procrastination, how to build motivation, reduce distractions, optimize time management, and some bonuses like how to master dopamine, improve your sleep, or how to plan your days. So I hope that helps, guys. So what I did here basically is an entire coaching program where I had videos that they watched. We had a coaching community where my clients supported each other, plus I hold them accountable there. And we had coaching calls, a lot of one-on-one calls I did to over-deliver, to create their daily structures, to create their plans, to make progress on their procrastinated projects. We had group coaching calls with master classes and presentation. We had deep work calls like accountability calls where we came together simply to work. And this works like magic if you simply join a group where everybody works at the desk and you are way more productive. This is part of the reason why a lot of people go to the library to learn, or at least students. Yeah, I did the same. So this is what I ended up doing. I made some money. It was a great time for sure. And I ended up helping over 40 people, and they achieved some remarkable results. And that's all their success. They put in the work. Like, for instance, Zoe, she handed in her PhD thesis. She was so kind mentioning me on the acknowledgements page of the PhD thesis. Or we had people like Kami, who decluttered her desk. So wonderful people I got to meet, and had definitely a great period time with them. So I also started to play the content game. And with that, I mean, nowadays a lot of people publish a lot of content on social media. And I started to do the same. And I did that specifically targeted to people with ADHD, adults with ADHD. And I talked about different kind of topics, which you can see here. And by the way, all posts are still online. And I also, as mentioned before, started this podcast, ADHD Power. And something what I found pretty interesting is before when I was doing Catch The Zenith, I wasn't really sure who my target group is when people listen to my podcast, to whom am I actually talking to. But when I started this new podcast, ADHD Power, I knew precisely I'm talking to adults with ADHD. And it was also authentic because I struggled one time in my life also with it. So I knew pretty well what kind of struggles they have. Obviously, I learned a lot about it during the period of this business. And that convinced a lot of people to buy the program because it was authentic. And I used exactly the words they are using to describe their struggles. And overall, this is really important marketing and sales overall. So I learned a lot, published, and that's also an important aspect. I published every day, at least, or one feed post and multiple stories. And a learning here was simple. You need to be darn consistent. Otherwise, it will not work out. Every single day I published, or at least that's what worked for me. And I published over 100 episodes. So I never stopped actually publishing podcasts. I simply switched everything to ADHD Power, which was first a German podcast and later then an English one. The same I did with my program. First, I served only German clients with my deep focus system, my MVP, and later Productivity Powerhouse. I served basically everybody who's talking English. And a quick side note, guys, I've merged all the episodes from my ADHD Power podcast into Catch The Zenith. Since I'm no longer doing the coaching, I thought it would be easier for user experience to have all my podcast episodes in one place. So you will find everything there now. And then that was summer 2022. I was fully focused on my business. I worked crazy long hours. I really enjoyed it. It was so stimulating. I loved it. But all of a sudden, I got into this master program. Actually, not all of a sudden, I signed up for that. And which is the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. It's like a small elite uni. And what ended up happening is, before I had 14, 16 hours per day where I could simply hyper-focus on my business. But now I needed to put in a lot of work here because this uni requires a lot of work to do. It has a high workload. So all of a sudden I needed to work at least 9 hours per day for university and then another 4 to 5 hours on my business. So quite a lot of work to do. I enjoyed it. But a major learning here was you need clear focus. Everything is so much easier as opposed to if you switch around things, because it's really mentally demanding, cognitively demanding if you need to switch all the time between your ADHD business, then you have here an assignment for uni, here a presentation, here group work to do, and so on. And by the way, for those of you who are watching the YouTube video, I'm now or those who are listening, I'm showing a picture of me where I moved into my new apartment. So that was my first apartment, moving out of my parents' home and living almost entirely independent. And by the way, that was when I moved in. I had actually a sales call then and to close a customer. So that was the fun experience. So I got into that master's program called MGM, Master in General Management, which was a revised master program. So they improved stuff, they rebranded it, and was a cool experience. A lot of work to do, but quite frankly, like that it should be. I loved it. And we also had a kickoff ceremony. A lot of people here where we learned a little bit more about the University of St. Gallen, because I didn't do my bachelor's degree there. I did that in Basel, Switzerland, and now I was in St. Gallen, so they have welcomed everybody. And I also had a really loyal study team consisting out of my friend Aga and Emre. I hope it's okay for them to put this amazing picture into this presentation. We had a great time. We used to learn a lot during our bachelor's degree. We did the entire learning phase when preparing for the semester exams. We did entirely together. And they also they actually inspired me to go to the University of St. Gallen. So also there we were for some periods together, a little bit more separated because I also wanted to meet other people and they did their thing. And but I love them. They are cool, really cool guys, and grateful to have you in my life. So that was my learning group. And by the way, here we were in Berlin. We went on, we had a course and we visited some startups in Berlin. It was kind of interesting. Then we had, in the first semester of my master's degree, I had a project called Managerial Impact Projects. And over the time of 2 semesters, you needed to start your own startup, your own business. And now you see the lack of focus I had at that point, because I got into that course and they asked you to start again a business, basically, and I already had mine, and I was like, oh, actually, I'm not sure if this is so intelligent, and actually wasn't that good of an idea. I realized I was juggling too many plates with 2 businesses in uni. Frankly, it was part of university, but obviously, if you want to do that good, you need to do overtime and work more. So I realized then, okay, you need to focus. The project itself was a greater learning experience, because what we wanted to do there, or what we did, and we sold customers, was to help C-level executives, to help them build up their personal brand via LinkedIn. So we help them to create like the content plan, sometimes writing posts or giving them the templates for the post, the strategy, how they want to position themselves on social media and stuff like that. The website, by the way, is still online, brandon.ch. Did that together with 4 other guys. One guy's, I think, missing here. Great learning experience, grateful for that. But the main takeaway is you need to focus in order to build a successful business. Here, then I also had this daily routine where I always went to a learning center, learning building called The Square, fancy place where you could learn and prepare for your exams and work on assignments. That's me, by the way, here. And then I met a guy, a fellow student of mine, and he did an internship in the US at Stadler Rail, which is a train manufacturer. And we became really good friends, I would say, or we get along pretty well with each other. And he asked me, hey, should I ask my boss if you also can do this internship in Salt Lake at this company? And I said, I thought a little bit about it, a few days, talked to my loved ones, and then I said, fuck it, let's do that, man. And I moved to Salt Lake City. Obviously, I did this decision, I guess, a half year before, a little bit more. And then in 2023, end of August, I moved to Salt Lake City. That's a city in Utah. And yeah, Salt Lake is kind of beautiful, has a lot of mountains, or it's pretty close to mountains, the Wasatch Mountains, pretty beautiful city, small downtown, and a lot of beautiful nature. By the way, for those of you who are into mountain biking, the Red Bull Rampage, there were those crazy guys doing those big cliff jumps with their bicycles. That's happening there in Utah, man. It's crazy. So here, then I worked at Stadler, did this internship. It was a pretty intense time, but I loved it. Here, me in the presentation meeting room. Here's the facility, and here's some. There were some nice mountains as well, which you can see here, the Wasatch Mountains. And I also recorded a podcast episode together with my boss, Stefan Baer. By the way, if you're listening to that, Stefan, I hope you're doing well. Greetings. It's episode 159, still online on my podcast. He shared a little bit more about how he got into the train industry, how he, what he does as a leader to have a good relationship with his employees and stuff like that. So really grateful for that conversation we had there, over 2 hours or something like that. And I also met some cool new people. For instance, I met Adam. So a quick story here. I decided when I went to the US to be a little bit more proactive when it comes to approaching people. Because as you know, Americans, if you're an American, maybe you know that, your Americans are pretty approachable. You can have a quick conversation, which I really love. And I said, while I was in the gym, I saw him working out, and he's already a little bit older than me. And I asked him, hey man, you're obviously a little bit older than I. What are you doing to stay so healthy? And then he told me, yeah, he's listening to Peter Attia podcasts and stuff like that, working out, going for hikes and stuff. And we ended up going for a beautiful hike in the Wasatch Mountains. And we had great conversation, and he became actually my friend. So that was and that's, by the way, also a little bit contrary to what not US people say, Europeans, for instance, like that Americans are superficial. I don't agree entirely with that, because I built it up to a really good friendship with people in the US. So just as a side note here. Yeah. And I also embrace, of course, the American lifestyle. I don't mean eating junk food, not that. I mean going to Whole Foods and buying my groceries there and buying large meal portions, like, for instance, this oversized steak, which I ate in one sitting. I don't know how many grams of proteins that was, but quite a lot, I would say. And obviously, I also worked a lot because I still was running my coaching business. And when I arrived in Salt Lake, I decided to wake up pretty early, because I was for a pretty long period already awake, and I said, I go now pretty early to sleep, and I wake up pretty early. So I set myself this commitment every night to sleep at 8:30 and wake up at 4:30 in the morning, 4:30 a.m. And I never had a real jet lag. I said, I simply don't believe anymore in jet lag. Let's avoid that. So what I did for 6 months straight is on, I guess, 99% of days, except of maybe 1 or 2 days, I woke up at 4:30. On the other days, maybe at 5 or 5:30. But every single day, almost 4:30. And that was a pretty good decision because what I needed to do, I was running my coaching business. And when I moved to Salt Lake, I had 10 clients enrolled into my program, which I was coaching, one-on-one, group coaching calls, all that good stuff. So I somehow needed to make time for that. So I needed a really good structure. And what I ended up doing is I woke up in 4:30. I started in 5 a.m. to worked 2 hours deep work or conducted coaching calls with some of my clients because some of them were in Europe and you have this time zone shift. Then at 7 a.m. I drove to the facility, to my internship, worked there till 12 p.m. Then I had 1 hour lunch break and I wasn't doing any break. I had a coaching call then, or I did outbounds. Then I worked more in my internship until 5. Then I drove back. I would drive back to my apartment and work for another 2 hours. I would work out in the gym and sleep. That's it. That's what I did. So I didn't have so many experience like hiking here. That was pretty rare. Actually, I went twice in the mountains. But I wanted to do it like this because I was willing to sacrifice a lot in order to deliver a good product to my clients and have a good time building a business. Yeah, and a lot of deep work sessions, which you can see on the right-hand side here. Something also what I've learned on this journey in this 6 months is that, first of all, it's okay to be alone and build a business. It's a pretty lonely journey, obviously. And you need to get somehow comfortable with that. And another thing is what I used to think I had of work capacity. So back in the day, I thought, I worked hard. I worked 8 or 9 or 10 hours. Then after a certain period, I realized, okay, my body's actually capable of way more if I pay attention on proper sleep. So 8 hours and consistent bedtimes, healthy, like good food, working out, do the basics, and you can work like hell. At least that worked for me. And I realized that I can increase my work capacity even more. I can work all day, and that's possible. And quick caveat here, I see life in seasons. There are seasons of no where you work like crazy, and there are seasons of less no's where you work less. That worked for me. Whatever works for you, that's perfectly fine. Just what I'm doing, I'm sharing my experience, I'm documenting my experience with you guys. So I realized that increasing work capacity, or what used to be my previous work capacity, was actually a joke compared to what I was doing there. Then, after 6 months roughly, I went back to uni, 10th of February, one day after my birthday, flew back to Switzerland, got back to and did my 3rd semester at the University of St. Gallen, my last exams, and had a pretty singular focus there. I was working every single day on the same desk. I always arrived there at 7 a.m., worked till 7 p.m., worked out and slept. That's all I did. And I always worked and learned in this fancy building called Square. By the way, guys, if you are in St. Gallen or Switzerland, definitely go there and have a look at that. It's pretty impressive. And I'm really grateful, by the way, that I had this privilege to learn there. By the way, this desk, I almost every single day I had this desk. I love it. So, and because I focused so much then on my university, and I reduced and ultimately decided to stop doing my coaching business, I achieved also some grades that were, from my standards, okay. I achieved a grade average of 5.33, which is 6 is the max. I guess this is a A- in the US, something like that. And I finished all exams, and now I'm writing my master thesis. So yeah, just to be fully transparent. And one thing I learned during the 3rd semester is that going from good to great requires so much work. So what I mean with that, when I had assignments to do at the University of St. Gallen, you have a lot of group work, and not only exams, a lot of assignments, papers to write, presentations to create. And one assignment I had was creating a poster. After each lecture in a course called Family Business, after each lecture, I needed to create needed to fill out an entire row with some insights, with some things I disagree of the lecture, my future actions. I will not go into the details, but what I ended up doing is I not did only writing my reflection on post-its. What I ended up doing is I wanted to create connections between the post-its. Quite frankly, they also asked us to do that. But I also tried to go even more into details. I started to add little pictures of the guest lectures we had and put that onto the poster. I tried to make it as good as humanly possible, that when I would hand in this poster, the tank is empty. I did everything I could do. And I'm feeling like, hey, I can't make this better anymore. And with that, I simply mean if you do so many 1% improvements, it can become really darn good. But it's a lot of work, because going from 0 to 80% of quality, that's doable. It's not that hard. However, if you want to go from 80% to 100%, it's so much more work. And I never spent, I guess, so much, or it was a lot of time basically that I spent on this poster. I don't know if it was the most amount I spent on an assignment, but definitely a lot. And the result was pretty good. I got a 6, which is the best mark. This is an A+, I guess, in the US. And obviously, there was not everything roses and beautiful. I worked almost every single weekend. Anyway, I always work Saturdays. Try to take Sunday off. Quite frankly, that doesn't happen that often. Maybe in future when I'm in a different season of less work. And during the third semester, I also ended up doing something which I want to share here. So back in 2022, I recorded a podcast episode together with Sylvain Krenbühl. He's a serial SaaS entrepreneur and the podcast host of the Swisspreneur show, which is a famous Swiss business podcast. And I had a good conversation with him, and I found his journey and his personality pretty inspiring. He's really ambitious, pretty smart, and really humble. And I learned a ton from what he shared in that conversation. And that always stuck with me and was in the back of my mind. And then in March 2024, so this year, I sent him an email. And the subject was hungry to hustle. Quite frankly, I picked that up from a YouTube video where somebody did a similar thing. He also used hungry to hustle. And in that email, I took a lot of time to write this email, but the gist was, hey, I'm hungry to hustle. Do you have something for me? Obviously, I put a little bit more thought in that. I try to provide as much value as possible. I said stuff like, hey, I will work free for you. I knew he loved, for instance, Naval Ravikant, and I shared with him some free resources which I found on the internet. So I did a really personalized email, tried to provide as much value as possible, and to get this opportunity. And what ended up happening is he said, I have something for you at Swisspreneur. And for those of you who don't know Swisspreneur is a non-profit organization with the mission to advance and develop entrepreneurship in Switzerland. And we do that through 3 tiers or pillars. That is, we have content, we have a podcast, free masterclasses about entrepreneurship, social media posts. Then we have a community. We host regular events in Switzerland where a lot of entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, etc. attend. And also we have a founders community with over 600 or 700 people, I guess over 700. And the third pillar is we do also investments, and that's where I'm working, or I'm doing my work, my contribution, the syndicate. We pool small ticket investors and invest in early stage and growth companies or startups. It's pretty convenient because some investors don't want to invest 50K or 100K. Someone only wants to invest maybe 5K or 10K. And they can do that through our syndicate, we pool them and invest them with a special purpose vehicle into a company. Yeah. So, and basically, he said, you can work in the syndicate, and I'm doing now there the investor relations and syndicate, managing the syndicate we have there, also sometimes startup relations as well. And here is our team. We also have a fantastic team at Swisspreneur. And you can see here, most of us, we are a little bit more than 10 people. Some people are missing here, but a really amazing team, and so grateful to be part of this cool group. By the way, here we did a team retreat in Porto this year, had an amazing time. And Silvan and I, who is like let's call it the CEO, the managing partner of Swisspreneur, we used we used this first 3 months as a trial period to see how we are working together. Is that working well, basically? Because what we are doing at Swisspreneur, this is all volunteering. This is because of our intrinsic motivation and passion towards entrepreneurship. And we had there a project. We wanted to host an investor event to match interesting startups, growth startups, with venture capitalists. And we did this project. We hosted an event, and it turned out we are actually working pretty well together. And already before, when I joined Swisspreneur, he asked me, hey, would you also be open to start your own startup or get into a startup, not only working for one? Because first I thought I will work for a startup. And I said, yeah, why not? And it was software. And I thought, okay, this is a logical next step for me, because I now did consulting, coaching, like with the ADHD coaching business, consulting with the LinkedIn thing, what I share with you, personal branding stuff. I'm now ready to do software. And by the way, here we had a good workout session, and this is a venture capitalist, cool guy as well. So now, status quo, what I'm doing today. So because he asked me, hey, do you also want to start your own company, your SaaS or software company? I said yes. And I basically joined the team. And we started with an initial idea where my friend Silvan was working on. And the initial idea was that, a lot of SaaS companies or software companies struggle with tracking their KPIs. So they are tracking all their relevant KPIs like annual recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue, churn, etc. Everything in Excel, which is really prone to error. It's pretty a manual process and not really fun to track your KPIs. And we wanted to replace your Excel with a software that provides all your SaaS metrics in real time, that you know exactly your health, the health of your business. And when you are raising money, you have all the relevant KPIs or metrics ready. What we ended up doing is conducting 36 interviews with that target group. And now, circling back at the beginning where I said, when I got into ADHD, I learned everything about this industry. The same we did here. So it's always the same, more or less, I realized. We did interviews and we wanted to understand the pain. And what ended up happening is we found out that there is a little bit pain, but this will not be like a multi-million-dollar business. We can make it to a profitable business, but this is not a big thing because the pain was not that big enough. People were not desperate to invest into a solution. And then we had a call with an investor, and I'm really grateful that he gave us pretty harsh feedback, but it was really helpful. Thank you for that, by the way. He said, you guys, you don't understand it. You want to target software companies, 1 million annual recurring revenue to 10 million annual recurring revenue. That's not that much. They don't have a lot of purchasing power. But because we had a certain idea how we want to deliver on that product, they just upload all their invoice data and then all their KPIs get calculated. The same approach with you dump in your data and then everything gets calculated. We could do that for M&A or private equity. And this is what we are working on right now. So let's break that down. Now we realize that a lot of highly paid analysts and associates spend countless hours on repetitive tasks or manual tasks during the due diligence when they simply want to invest in a company. For those of you who don't know private equity is like they are investing money in privately held companies. Yeah, that's basically what they do. And whenever they want to buy a company or get the majority stake or buy stocks, they make a proper due diligence to make sure a proper analysis of the business. And we realized that there is huge pain and there is a lot of potential for automation. So we decided to help private equity companies conduct better due diligence, do better due diligence in less time with artificial intelligence. And that's what we are working on right now. We did there again some more interviews. Now we have a total of over 50 interviews with both ideas together. And that's what I'm doing right now. And it's kind of hard because I'm not from that industry. So there's a lot of things to learn for us. And it's the first time I'm doing software. But I'm feeling pretty confident that we as a team, because I have some team members who are also part of that, like my co-founder, someone who is doing the design, or Sylvan is also part of it as the chairman. So really grateful to have a great, cool team and working on that together. And the name of this business is Deal Lens. Now, in the beginning of this podcast, I said, I want to share with you what's next. What is the plan with this podcast, Catch The Zenith? So what I want to do with this podcast is the following. So first, I revised the entire website. Yeah, this is what I already done. I made it way more simpler because before I had a website that was a little bit cluttered, a little bit too much information. So I broke it down to the essence, which you can see here now on my new website, catchthezenith.com. And I want to now explain you what I will do in future with this podcast by showing you how I'm allocating my time. So 80% of my time goes into my business, 80 to 90%. That's everything, either starting my business, what I'm doing right now, or working for a startup, whatever, ideally software. By the way, I'm not a developer, I'm doing marketing, sales, but it needs to be startup or software. So I'm doing that. Business is 80%, 90%. Then 10 to 20% of my time is committed towards Swisspreneur, where I work as a volunteer syndicate manager, doing the investor relations, what I explained before. And those two activities, business and Swisspreneur, they complement each other. So that means whenever I learn something in business, I can share that with my team at Swisspreneur. But on the flip side, if I learn something at Swisspreneur, I can use that in my business. So it's really a giving and taking. So really, really cool. And I really love doing this activity and giving something back also to the community of entrepreneurs. And beneath of that is my podcast that supports both activities, the business and Swisspreneur. Because I want to in future use my podcast as a reflection tool where I make sure that I don't forget the lessons I've learned and the mistakes I made to avoid to make mistakes twice. So let's break that down. Podcast moving forward. Here's some foundations. So what is the vision for my podcast now? First of all, I want to be 100% my authentic self online and offline. Because back in the day, sometimes I felt like I'm not 100% authentic on social media or my podcast. And I want to change that. Sometimes I'm a little bit scared to share everything or stuff like that. So I want to make sure that long-term wise, I speak the truth and state the facts all the time. And don't need to be scared to not share something because it's a little bit private. Maybe I will not share everything, but you get the gist. I just want to be authentic online and offline. And my mission here is to follow my curiosity and share it with the world. I'm someone who is really, I love knowledge. I love learning new stuff. And this podcast is a cool creative outlet to do that. And more precise, the goal of my podcast is now to document my self-improvement and business journey to learn from mistakes and lessons to get better in life and entrepreneurship. To break that down into a concept. So this podcast is basically like my diary where I document my personal and professional life. I simply want to document and share what I'm doing. Sometimes I will share some concepts and ideas, what I'm doing right now sometimes. But it's less what I did before. Sometimes for some episodes back in the day, like for instance, how to become more focused or more how to build up concentration, I spend a lot of time researching, and I want to spend less time on that and more simply showing what I'm doing and sharing my thoughts, my lessons, ideas I picked up, stuff like that. So I'm not entirely avoiding teaching, but more sharing what I'm doing. That's the concept. So simply, I document my journey. And I still want to continue to interview amazing people like Professor Sven Völpel, Sylvain Krehenbühl, or Dr. Markus Elsässer, which I had on this podcast. I still want to do that. And to be a little bit more specific in terms of technical stuff, I want to publish one episode per week, which gets published on Monday, or at least one episode. If I want to do more, then I can do more, but at least one episode. And the output of this endeavor or of this activity of publishing podcasts is, first of all, to learn a ton, avoid making mistakes twice because I share with you my lessons. I can myself re-listen them and avoid them. Remember past lessons by coming back to them. Become more literate in English because this is not my native language. German is my native language. And also strengthen my network by talking to people. And the format will be, I will publish solo episodes, interviews, and collabs. That is the frame, basically. And my focus, and here's maybe some bullets or thoughts about how to ensure that I stick to that commitment. So I'm planning to do this for the next 10 years by 2035. And then I will reassess and see if I still want to continue this podcasting thing. And I want to play the long-term game, the long game, and be patient. By the way, a helpful definition for patience is to figure out what to do in the meantime. That's what patient is. And I'm figuring out what to do in the meantime is I'm doing business and Swisspreneur. And then I'm doing sometimes podcasts. Yeah. So I need to be patient. And it's, I simply wanted to use as a reflection tool. And a good reminder to myself, which I wrote here, is success comes down to doing the obvious thing for an extraordinary period of time without convincing yourself that you are smarter than you think you are. This podcast is an asset. It will compound over time. So showing up every single week will compound over time. And interestingly, the first 90% of recording podcasts is without seeing any rewards. I remember when I recorded for over 80 episodes on my Catch The Zenith podcast, I didn't have that much listeners. It was only then when I started a new podcast, ADHD Power, that blew up pretty fast. And we ranked in the German health podcast Billboard charts, whatever, on rank 50, 52, something like that. And that was for me like a pretty good sign that, hey, I acquired some skills. It just needed to be wrapped differently and then it can work great. So sometimes the knowledge compounds and then all of a sudden the payoff day comes pretty fast. And the same applies now to this project again. So 90% is just consistency, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and the big payday, or not payday, let's say the big compounding starts then in the last 10%. And I give you an example. The podcast Modern Wisdom of Chris Williamson, he published for years, every single week, multiple episodes. Nobody cared. But when it took off, he got in that year more listeners than ever before. And that's the power of compounding. It doesn't apply only to the stock market, but also to podcasting, to healthy habits, to almost everything. And there is an interesting statistic that I always try to keep in mind, and that is 90% of podcasts don't get past episode 3. Guys, episode 3. You only need to publish 3 episodes, to be already better than a lot of people. So that's 1.8 million who quit. The numbers are a little bit outdated, but you get the gist. And of the 200,000 left, 90% will quit after 20 episodes. So that's another 180,000 gone. So, listen guys, to be in the top 1% of podcasts in the world, you only need to publish 21 episodes. Come on guys, I think you can do that as well. Or whatever you're doing, just to keep that in mind how low the bar is to win. So I need to repeat that. 90% of podcasts don't get past episode 3. That's 1.8 million who quit. Of the 200k left, 90% will quit after 20 episodes. That's another 180k gone. So to be in the top 1%, you need to publish only 21 episodes. So the takeaway here is be patient, stay consistent, and just win. Singular focus is important. And the themes I want to cover on my podcast Catch The Zenith in future is twofold. First, business-related topics like building, selling, and leading. And beneath of each of those are different subtopics. Within building, for instance, it's validation, minimum viable products, product market fit, how to talk to customers and conduct customer interviews. Software as a service, that's a category in itself, a huge one. Then selling, obviously there you have sales calls, objection handling, pricing, sales metrics, retention, lifetime value, how to do outbound and lead generation, content, ads, lead getters, stuff like that. And in terms of leading, the third topic I want to cover on this podcast is about vision setting, prioritization, team motivation, and delegation. And then the second big topic pillar is high performance. I mentioned before in this podcast, I love those productivity and high performance routines and topics. So I want to talk about physical health, mental health, and relationships. Or as Naval Ravikant said, a fit body, a calm mind, a house full of love. These things cannot be bought, they must be earned. And this is basically my inspiration why to focus on physical health, mental health, and relationships, because those are so important pillars of life to be healthy, to be good overall. And beneath of each of those topics are, again, subtopics like when it comes to physical and mental health, focus, minimalism, productivity, time management, to-do lists, systems, time blocking, habits, nutrition, sports, sleep, mental models, decisions. And then in terms of relationships, relationship routines, expectation setting, trust, communication, etc. All right, those are the topics I want to cover. And moving forward, I really want to build a community. And this community I call Zenith Nation. And within Zenith Nation, we have a lot of Zenith catcher. So if you are listening to this podcast, you are you're actually a Zenith catcher. So just to set the expectation here, how I will call you in future. By the way, you can find this podcast now also on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, which you will find in the description below. Of course, we have Spotify, Apple Podcasts, but I thought video is also an interesting medium or way to convey my messages. So let's also open a YouTube channel. Those three platforms are the major ones where you can listen to my podcast: YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. I also write a weekly newsletter, which I publish on Sunday. Again, this is simply, I document my journey. This is all I'm doing there. And by the way, the baseline for the newsletter and my podcast episodes is my X or Twitter account. I started to use that as a notes to self, documenting my business journey tool, basically. And if you go on my X account, my handle is Nicola Flückiger, you can basically follow what my thoughts, my ideas, my lessons learned. I'm sharing there simply, I'm documenting there my journey. And this is like the baseline for the weekly podcast episodes sometimes, and also for my newsletter, Zenith Sunday. By the way, the newsletter, you can sign up in the description below. It's completely free value into your inbox every Sunday. All right. That's everything about Catch The Zenith, and I hope you enjoyed. So that's basically what I did for the past 2.5 years. Now, if you liked this episode, please like this video on YouTube and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And please let me know what you think of my plan for this podcast moving forward in the comments below. And you can just leave a comment and say, hey, Nicola, I like your plan. Or if you think it's crap, just tell me. Yeah. So I will see you in the next one. Bye.